Hello everyone, welcome back to the third and last session of our mobile app development course. Hopefully you had some time to play around with your app ideas and maybe made your own app or try to follow my steps from the last session. Today we're gonna go a bit more advanced. I'll try to cover some more advanced features like different inputs, how to create a link between your client, your mobile app, to other data sources, other backends. So this session will be a bit more advanced, and it will be about how to extend the current functionality, and also how to troubleshoot the app, what tools to use. So I'll actually cover that in a second. Let's recap quickly what we've done the last session. So we learned how to create new pages, new resources on Apri.io platform. So we could create new page, add links to other pages. So we could navigate between different pages. We could add elements, so add some more functionality into it, and then link those elements to some events. So extending the functionality and linking even more that way to a database. So we created a database, created some columns to store our data from the app's inputs, and before we were interrupted, we could see how the data was pushed onto the database, and we were trying to create another page to list all the entries from that database. So once we have pushed some report, we could then go to another page to see all the entries in that database, and that's where we stopped the last session. Today we're going to add an image picker, so we will be able to add photos to those reports that the app can send to the database. Also, we'll add alternative for GPS. For example, if the phone doesn't have GPS but has network connection, then maybe a map would be a good alternative. So we'll add a map that will allow the user to tap or to click on the map and input that click coordinates onto the stored somewhere in the app and then sent to the database. And then we're going to move on to creating a map of all the with markers of all current reports on our database. So we'll try to link our database to a map where we can see all the reports being plotted down as markers. And we're gonna go a bit more into how Apri.io works on the storage of it, how you can create different storage on the phone, so you can store variables. You don't have to send it to the database, but you can also store some variables on the phone itself, and that will remain through different sessions. So once the app is closed and open, it will remain again, and that will take us to debugging. So I'll show you how different tools, how you can debug your apps, which should be very useful for you as well as myself. This is one of the tools I'm going to show you will be one of the most popular tools in our tool sets, our developers tool set. So hopefully you'll know how to debug of JavaScript, how the elements of that app that you create look like underneath, and you will be able to tinker around with them, change the styles and stuff. And then finally we'll move on to connecting your app to other sources, to other backends, so other RESTful APIs. We'll try to connect it to a weather API, so the app could fetch some weather data. Also, if there's time, I'll try to link an app to external data sources, which databases, which will be the MongoDB database, MongoLab in this case, so that you're not only limited to using Apri.io's database, but you can very easily replace that to some external one. And the last thing, I'll try to cover how you can how you can use GBIF's Global Biodiversity Information Facilities API to create a simple app that would list all the occurrences, all the species occurrences in your location. So we'll try to make a simple app for that, and also questions and answers. So I would welcome questions and answers, questions being shown on the chat all the time. So don't worry, you can always ask a question, and I'll try to answer it. And of course, I'll try to leave as much time as we can in the very end. All right. So let's start with that. Now I'm going to open my Chrome browser where I have opened the previous app that we had been working on. I'm going to close my view now. So this is the collection page from the last session, and it has some inputs like multiple selection boxes, data, number. We have GPS that populates these two fields, latitude and longitude, with the GPS coordinates that we later send to our database, and also other input fields, textual input fields like name, email, or comment, and a submit button. Now, where we were left the last time was the reports page. And that page has a simple collapsible set with one entry in it that lists some different fields here that we're trying to list information from the database. So what we done, we went to the data of that page, data section, and we call the reports list service. So if you remember from the last time, we created multiple services. One of them was geolocation, so that belongs to the device itself. Then there was a create service that would create a new entry to the in the database, and reports list service that would list all the current entries from the database. So what we're doing here in this case is we fetching all the resources from the database, and then mapping those resources onto our page elements. So if we extend the elements, on the left we have the response from the database, so that's the service response, and on the right we have the elements of that page. So at the top here we have in the brackets I character, which represents a array, and that array we can link to elements that depending on the array size will multiply. So we have linked that to the mobile collapse block, which means that depending on how many elements are in that array, it will create that many mobile collapsible blocks. And then inside each of the block we have different input elements, elements that we want to link our data to. So we want to display that data from the collection. So we have so far linked name, problem, number, note, and we can see how that works. I'm just going to save that and go on to testing page. Now again, it might take some time, sometimes a bit slow. Okay, I think I'm gonna just refresh it. Okay. Okay, I'm also going to open the database in the meanwhile. The testing page is opening. Maybe I'm going to just refresh it again. Okay, so we got that. In the current database, we have a few entries that we have sent the last week. It's a couple entries that we should see now in the new page we created. So if we go to the reports page, here we go. We see those two entries here listed. Now I have actually changed the theme since the last time. and I just want to show you where I've done it so that you can do it again. I went on to adding more themes and added iOS 7 theme. So it looks a bit different from the last session, and I'm going to change it to Swatch A. Okay, so it looks a bit different now, a bit cleaner, I suppose. All right, so we got all these entries listed on our reports page, but we want to add some more information to it. We want to add some more information being sent to the database in the first place. And for that, we're going to add an image picker. So if we go back to the collect page, and there we're going to add, there we have this grid with 4 cells, and the bottom 2 are still empty. So we're going to add an image here on the left, and an input on the right. So that input can be of different types, and if you remember, it can be a number, email, etc. And what we're going to choose here is a file. So that will be a file input, and we're going to give it a name. We'll give it a name. It can be anything really. File input, and that image will be, again, give it a name like file input image. Okay. Now, what that button allows us to do is to select a file, but it's not gonna put it into a database. It's not gonna actually send it to anywhere, just like with any other field. What we need to do is to encode the image that we have selected and put it instead of this image, and then later we can send it along with all the other information in this report. So for that, I have created a little service module that is very easy to use. If you remember the email, the last email from the last session had this link to my Gist repository where I have different files for this and the previous sessions, and we haven't used many of these. We just used the app styles and the logo at the bottom. So now we're gonna use an input image service. So that's the image service we're gonna use, and we're gonna create a new service. So that's going to be a bit new for us. We haven't done that the last time. So we go for the data section of that page, and we're gonna create a new data source. We're gonna create a new service, and rather than choosing a reports list or create service, we're gonna create a new service, just like we did with geolocation. But in this case, we're gonna create a new one, and it will be a generic custom JavaScript implementation. And I'm gonna give it a name, input service, and save it. Now what it will do, it will allow us to choose different implementation. So I'm gonna actually create a new service, and input service. I'm gonna create a new JavaScript file that I have just called input service and open it. So we can see it has already pre-populated some information, but we can override it. We can actually, we can just, so I have called it image service. All right, that's not good. I might need to, I'm gonna actually open that one. I wonder if I can just change that image service, and also here that will be image service. Image service, okay. And then in that file here, I'm just gonna kind of open my file. Just copy paste everything. You can upload the file itself. It doesn't matter which way you do it. But I'm just gonna copy all that service, and I'm gonna add it here instead of that. So in that, at the top of all these files, I have given some instructions of how to use that service, and what it requires is an input element that we have just created. It will require on change of that input element to call this JavaScript. So you don't have to write anything, just copy paste that into the event handler, and also map the output of that service onto where you want it to be. It can be storage, you store in a variable in a storage. It can be an element value like what we're gonna do now, or other options. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna just copy that bit here. We're going to open the collection page, click on that input, go for the events, and on value change of that file input, we're going to execute JavaScript. So we're going to just paste that, and what that will do is, as you can read it yourselves, image service execute an element this. What that means is basically I'm just going to execute this service if the value of this input will change with this element. So basically I'm just passing the file from this element to this service that will encode the file into a string, and then we can store that somewhere where we want it. So I'm gonna save that, and I'm gonna go back to data, and I'm gonna actually first need to open the image service itself, and the response of it I need to add a new variable. So that's part of the instructions that are put on top of the service itself. So the variable will have to be named image. So I'm just going to add that, and the type of that variable that it will return is string. So if we go back to our collect page and the data field of it, and we're going to add the new data source. So currently we have just created a new type of service, but we haven't actually added it to the page itself. So that happened before with geolocation or report create services. What that basically means is just creates the description of the service, but we actually need to add the implementation. So we're going to click on the image service and add, and I'm going to give it a good name, image service. And all that the service does is it changes the file input that we have added into string, and outputs it as an image variable that we can map onto something. So we're going to click on mapping data image. So that's the variable we have created for the service. It is called image, and we're going to map it onto something. We're going to map it onto that file input image. So I think it was mobile grid, and there we go, file input image asset. So we're going to just drag and drop it here. What that does is just basically we take that result and map it onto that image, and I can save it now, and it should work now. Let's see, let's have our fingers crossed. Alright, let's go to collector page, and I'm gonna choose a file here. I'm gonna open up a file. I'm gonna put this file, and here we go. We see two poachers on the river. So what that means is that basically it took this file and changed it into a string that we can actually just put it instead of image. Why is it a string, you might ask? It's because it's easier to handle on the database side, because strings are a bit more well, the way the APRI implements the file database, it's a bit more complicated for this course, so it's just much easier to use it as strings. And also the APRI IO itself suggests that this approach through their modules. So we have created that, and all we have to do now is upon the submission of this new report, we need to include this image as well. So we go back to the data, I can close that, and the report create service. I need to add new mapping. Well, actually I need to update the mapping. So not a success, sorry, it's on before send. So before I send the report, I need to map that image. I need to map that image onto the service input. So, and that's the photo. So I'm gonna just take and drag the asset of that image to the photo. I'm gonna save it now, and I'm going to test it again. So we can see 2 entries here in this database. I'm gonna make it full screen, and the photo part of it is empty. So I'm gonna try to send a new report. I'm gonna select poaching, select yesterday's date, get my GPS location, select an image, add a name, and that's it, and click on submit. So hopefully that will send it correctly. Okay, we got the success message back. The form has been cleaned again, and if we go to the database and and click on the refresh, it shows here that there is some information in the photo section. Well, it looks gibberish to our eyes. It is a string really, but if we copy that and put it onto as a new tab, so really just drag and drop onto a new tab, we can see the image itself. So what that means is that it is an image. That string is an image that is just differently encoded in the background. So we have that image stored here, and then we can later map it onto something else, like our collection report. So if we go back to report page, and we're gonna add a new grid. I want to display that image onto our results page. So if we add a new grid here, and I'm gonna choose just 1 row, okay, and add a new image here. Where is the image? Okay, add a new image, and I might add a date as well, just on the right, so it looks, so we just use all the space. It's text area. We don't need the text area. Text area is much bigger than an input. So we're gonna add a label and call it date label, and this will be a report image. All right. So that's it. Now we're gonna go on to date again. Open the reports list service, and on successful fetch of that data from our database, we're going to map it again. We're going to open it up. I'm going to open the page, and now here we can see the header and the content. So we want to go for the header, and there's a grid as well in that header. You might get a bit confused, but I think just reading through them, if the names are sensible, the element names are sensible, you'll find it, I'm sure. So if I go to open up the report image asset, and I'm gonna just link the photo that we have fetched from the database onto the report image asset, and the date label, I'm gonna open and link a date as well. So here we go. If I save it and go to the mobile preview, actually I need to save it first. I'm going to open the reports page, and hopefully we should see the image there as well. Okay, so there are no images on that one, and there's an image on that one. So beautiful. We want to close these initially because they look a bit horrible when they all opened up, and that you can do by going back to the design of it. Click on the one of the blocks. I can't remember which one is it. Okay, so it's mobile collapsed block, and just tick the collapsed tick box, and that will make it collapsed. So next time I open it, they should all be collapsed. And actually this looks a bit horrible as well because it's so big. I might want to make it 50 pixels, and I don't know if that's gonna keep the ratio or not, but let's give it a go. Okay, well the ratio is not beautiful here, so we can just create another 50 pixels width, and so it looks a bit better. Okay, so now we know how to add an image and how to send it to our database and how to retrieve it. We want to add something extra, and that's the map input I've told you before. If we go back to collect page, the design of it, I want to add a map on this form, and I'll do that by first creating a collapsible block that will hide the map if the user doesn't need it. So I'll make a collapsible set here. Oh, sorry, that shouldn't be in this grids cell. It should be just underneath. Okay, and I'm gonna go and change it to one item only, because that will only have one map in it. So I'm gonna do that, and I'm going to make it extended for the time being and add a map. So you can see there's a map element. I'm gonna add the map, drag and drop, and I'm going to show an info window. Just unclick that because you don't need it. I'm gonna click on the map itself and give it a name. Well, that's very important, because the service we're gonna use for populating, for actually listening for the events of that map, will use the name of the map itself, and the name of it I gave in the service, which you can easily change, is my map. So if we could just name it my map, you should see that the map is there, and if we test it, we should see the collapsible block expanded with a map inside. Okay, here we go. It's in San Francisco, which is not very good. We need maybe to say it's somewhere in UK, London, UK. So there's some properties of the map you can explore yourselves, like you can provide latitude and longitude or the address. That will use the geocoding and fetch the latitude and longitude for you and zoom it somewhere. So so I've just provided a London, UK to be its base position, its centering. The map itself doesn't do much currently. It needs a service, and to do that we're going to go back to our GIST, and we're going to open the map service. That's the service we're going to use for this input. And the instructions here say that create a map with the name my map, create a service, map service, with the code underneath. So we're going to create a map service with all this code here, and we're going to add two response fields, latitude and longitude, so that the user click will be translated into latitude and longitude that we can map from the service response onto something we want. And all we have to do beside that is just to initialize the map upon the page load. So we have to attach these listeners, these user click event listeners, after the page has been loaded. All right, so I'm just gonna copy that. All right, I'm gonna go back and go to data, and like we did with the image service, just basically the same steps. We're gonna create a new service. It's gonna custom map service. Okay, and we're gonna give a custom implementation. Open the map itself, the service description, and just paste that code. So again, like the previous time, we're just creating a new service with this code that I have written for you. And all it asks now is to create two response fields, latitude and longitude. So if we go back to map service, response, and add new fields, both as string, though actually they're numbers. So I should probably just do it as a number. And the last thing it asks is to call initialize map upon the page load. So if we go back to our collection page and design and events, and if we click our page here, it will already select the load event. So upon the loading of this page, not the dialog, run some JavaScript and just paste that. So that will just initialize the map and save it. So now that's great. It's going to initialize the map and call the service, which we haven't actually created yet. So we're gonna create the service itself. We have created the description of the service, not the service. So we're gonna click the map service, add, and I'm gonna give it a call map service. And now we're gonna map our output of that service, which is latitude and longitude that we have selected, onto some element or into storage if we wanted. So if we go back, if we go to success callback and expand the response of that successful callback and map it into, I'm gonna map it onto the same latitude and longitude label as the GPS button does. So what that means is that the same field is pre-populated using GPS and a map. I'm just gonna drag and drop like that and save it. And now, hopefully that should work, and hopefully that should allow us to click on the map and grab the location of the click. So if we open that, okay, the map has been zoomed into London, and if I click onto the map, okay, well, nothing happens. I need to inspect what's wrong, and that's what I'm going to cover in a second. I'm going to show you how it is done with the debugging. Well, first thing is I would look into console at the bottom, and it would most likely give an error, say something in red most likely, so something like this. It would give a reference error or a variable not found error, etc. So apparently it doesn't give any errors in this case, and it doesn't look like the map has been initialized. That's the problem in here. So I wonder why it hasn't been initialized. I'm going to just open back the design and see on the page load, initialize the map. Okay, is that what we want? Well, yes, that's initialize the map. And map service, if I click on that. Okay, it should initialize this map, though it doesn't, and I wonder why. That's how it goes often with demos. Okay, well, I'll probably leave it here. There, I'm gonna check the last thing. Map service settings. Okay, so it does that. I'm gonna go and open the collection page. I'm gonna add some console logging. So I'm gonna write console log. This is actually very useful for you guys, so you know how to debug your programs. So for example, in this case, the initialize map is not called for some reason, and I don't know why is it. So I'm gonna write console log, which will display a message onto console with what I want to say. So I'm gonna say page load. Okay, so I should see that coming on the log if it's run, if this event is run. And I'm gonna open up and save and test click on that. Okay, well, it does say page load. It doesn't work. Okay, I might need to change the page load into page show. That might do the trick. Might need to see. Okay. Sorry. It doesn't look like it works. Though it did work previously correctly. Initialize map. Okay, well, we'll move on. So that would normally pre-populate the fields. So that's what it should have done. I'll look into this, what was wrong later on. So upon a click, it would pre-populate these two fields here. And that would be just an alternative to GPS. And I would just want to keep it closed. I'm going to keep it closed for this. For the view. So I'm going to click on that collapsible input on the block and keep it collapsed. So now it just looks a bit more neater. Okay, so we got that. Well, almost. And what we want to do now is to plot all the records from the database onto a map, which is a cool feature. So I'm going to create a new page. I'm going to create a new page that I will call map reports. I'm going to add a back button, map reports, and add a map onto here. Make it a bit bigger, I guess. Maybe 350. And also I need to add a new service. So I'll go and do something similar like I did before. I'm gonna go and to the GIST, and there's a map marker service, and the instructions for that say create a map named my map, add this script to the JS folder, and create a service with these parameters. Now, before we do that, I should explain you something about how the data works behind the scenes. And I have showed you a slide the last session, and that is JSON, which is a JavaScript object notation. That's a lightweight data interchange format that you can see yourself is human readable, and it's easy to read and update and understand what's going on. So before we add the map with markers from our database, we should understand how the data works. The JSON format is the most popular and mostly used among all the services currently, including our backend that we use for this app, and that JSON format is a name value pairs format where you create a name which is a key and store some value. So that is the value of that element, and it doesn't have to be just a string. It can be a number, or it can also be an array, and an array would mean just a collection of other values or name value pairs if it's an object you want to store inside. And what is an object is a name having a collection of another name value pairs inside of it. So that goes in indefinite, infinite. You can add an array inside an array. You can add an object inside an array, and etc. So that's a really flexible format for keeping different types of data. And I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna show you a bit better how it works on the Apre.io. we're gonna close this bit now and open Apereo again and go for the model and storage in the project folder. So that allows us to create different models, and storage that we want to store some variables. Say I can create a new variable that we call date. I can do that, and that will allow me to choose different storage. The local storage is the one that is not going to change through different sessions. Session storage will clean itself after the app has been closed, but it will preserve the status while the app is in use. So we want it to be local storage, something that is not going to be lost. And the types it's giving me is string, number, boolean, and u. Well, the u is something I created here as a model. I'm going to delete it for the time being. And I'm going to create, say, a model of this JSON, a JSON object representation. So I'm going to create a model called markers. And that markers will be an array that will hold multiple markers. And each entry of that marker, of these markers array, will be an object. So imagine an array of multiple objects inside that array, and each object will have two name value pairs, which is latitude and longitude. So we have an array of markers, each having a latitude and longitude. Something we're gonna map from our database collection onto here that will be stored inside the app itself and reused later onto different things. So this is actually very important, because if you want to store some information, not only, for example, on elements that you render onto the view. Say we always stored GPS service results onto a label. We stored the image picker results onto image. We stored text on text input field, etc. But we don't have to do that. We can also store the information inside the permanent storage inside the app itself. And so you can play around with that and extend the functionality of your app. And in this case, what we're trying to do is we're trying to fetch the results of the reports list service. So fetch all the entries from the database and grab only the latitude and longitude of all these entries and store them as markers in our permanent storage. So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to create a couple services. Well, actually, we're going to create this service I mentioned before. I'm going to open collection page and create a new service. I'm going to close this non-working map service and create a new service and give the name map marker service. And just like before, I'm just going to check if it's correct name. Map marker service. Great. So I'm going to choose custom JavaScript implementation, just like the previous times. So what we're doing now is basically just doing the same thing with different services. So you don't have to write all this code for yourselves. And I'm just going to choose custom implementation and create a new JavaScript file, which will be map marker service. Open that file and copy paste again this service. Again, you can upload it if you want it. It's just easier for me to copy paste it. So that's it. What it does require is the markers create a request parameters like we did previously with the previous map service, latitude and longitude, or we did it with the image we created an image property parameter for the response. So here we need to create two parameter for a request, and this is how we're gonna do it. We're gonna open the map marker service. We're gonna open the request and create a new parameter name called markers, and that type will be the object we have created. Where is that? App settings. No, app settings. Okay, we need to get the map markers. Now, should we not see it here? Request parameters. Okay, all right, I got it. So we're gonna have to just not to map it that way, but we're gonna have to create another JSON representation here. Unfortunately, App.io doesn't allow you to reuse this model. It allows you to create a storage variable from the model you created. Somehow I hoped you could do that here as well, but we're gonna just do this exactly the same we did with the model. So we're gonna create a new array called markers, and each array will have an object and two values, name value pairs again, latitude and longitude. And that's it. Now we have the service. We need to initialize the service. So we're going to go to the collect page. We're going to add the service we have just created. So map marker service. Oh, sorry, this is not the collect page we want to go. We actually want to go onto map reports page. And here we want to go onto data and add a service, map marker service, and add it. So I'm just going to give a call the same, map marker service, and so we have created the request. So we're going to map the before send parameters onto this service request. So the markers, we're gonna be mapped from our storage saved markers. So I'm gonna go to model and storage again, and we have created these markers I've shown before, but we haven't created the variable that will use this model. So I'm gonna delete this date. We don't need the date here. We're gonna give a new variable that will be stored in the storage, and we'll give it a name, markers. We'll add it, and here we're gonna choose the markers type. So now this marker will be of this type, of this model type. And if we go back to our map marker service, no, sorry, that's map reports, and it has updated the storage that we have, and we just need to link the saved map markers from the storage onto this map that we're gonna add the markers. Now I need to map the array as well, so that we'll just transfer the whole array with latitude and longitude onto this map service. So that's it. We got it now. We got the map markers being plotted on the map itself. But first, we haven't fetched the markers from the database. So we need to do that first. We're gonna create a new service. Well, actually, we're gonna create the same list service. Add it here. It's on the same map reports page. And what that will do is, I'm just gonna give a name of report. And what that will do is, it will, on successful fetch of all our saved entries from the database, it will store the results. Oh, sorry, that's that's before saying we on successful one, we're gonna store all the results, which is again, all these values from our database onto storage markers. So we're gonna drag and drop that so that initialize an array of type of model markers, and just copy latitude and longitude. Save and return. And what we need to do now is on complete full saving of the data from the database, we need to initialize the map marker service. So on complete fetch of the database entries, we're going to invoke a service, and the service here at the bottom, I'm going to choose the map marker service. So that's it. I'm just going to save it now and test it and see how it goes. First, I haven't added the link to map reports page, so I'm going to go into start screen, add a new button, and just give it a name. Map reports, and on a click, it should take me to a page. Map reports. Okay. So here we go. If I open the map reports first, now I need to initialize the report list service. So the service that will save the response from the database as markers on our storage, internal storage, and then invoke our map marker service will have to be initialized first. And we're gonna just do the same like we did before. We're gonna select the page, on load. I'm gonna invoke a service, and now I'm gonna invoke this report list service. So okay, let's save it. I need to actually change the location again to UK. Okay, and test it. Well, hopefully that's gonna work. Okay, so it doesn't work. It says invalid value set map, not an instance of map. Okay. Okay. So you can see that there's an error. Actually, that's very strange that it doesn't work, but that's how it goes with the demos. We have 7 minutes left. Rather than fixing this one, which I will update the comments on the map service instructions on the GIST repository. I should explain you a bit more how debugging works, because we're very pushed by time. And if you have some questions, please ask them in the chat while I'm explaining you about the tools we can use here. Unfortunately, I have so much more to tell, but this is really we're trying to fit a lot of information into 4 hours. So I think what's the most important thing for you guys now would be to understand how to debug the apps that you're building, and the most important tool would be this tool I have opened on the right. This is the debugging tool for the websites or web applications, in this case hybrid applications as well. And this is a tool that is used across all the browsers, name it Safari, Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer. They all have this tool in one form or another, and this tool is most likely invoked through clicking and right button on the page. So if I go and open any page, like again BBC's page, click a right button somewhere, inspect, and this is going to open on the right or the bottom of the page. So now in here that you can see different layout views. Now we have selected the elements. There's console, sources, network, timeline, etc. So what's important for you guys now is this elements, the first tab that has been opened. It represents the document, the HTML document that is behind this this web page that we see, and it allows you to choose different elements from the document. Say if I click on this select an element in the page to inspect it button, if I click on that in the corner, it lights up as blue, and then I can hover it on any element in the page, so you can see it highlights it. If I click on this news bit, it's going to highlight me the element, that the HTML element behind the scenes, so we can see how the code looks behind the scenes, and then we can change it. We can see whether that is correct or not. So if we want to change it, like news, and add I don't know, something like a plus. Okay, that is an image actually, I think. But if I want to delete it, I can just click delete on that, and it will delete the image from it. I can select the menu, expand it, and change the name here as well. So menu. So you can interact with your website, in this case with the app itself as well. If I go back to the app, if I go back to the mobile preview, and I want to inspect this this button, back button, I want to change the color of it. So I have highlighted the back button. You can see it here on the right, this is highlighted, and at the bottom you can see there are styles, the styles that have been applied to this button. If you remember the last session, we have added cascading style sheet, which have centered our logo, our app logo in the center. So we could do this, we could do that here. If I go back actually and click on that icon, and I can change, I can see what styles have been applied to it. This is actually the app logo class that we have applied, and I can switch it off. I can switch it on and off. I can see the changes. I can select a button, and I can apply a different color. So I can say background color red, and you can see the color is changing immediately. I might want to change the color into something better. Okay, just gonna save that for the time being. But what it allows you to do is play around with the design, with the style sheets, with the layout of the page. So if you want to understand how the grid element works better, why it doesn't work in your case, just open up this tool, open up the elements, click on the element you want to inspect, and you can see different information about this element. Say for example here at the element I have lighted on the right, you can see a starting tag, which is, I'm gonna show you that way. You can see an A starting tag. This is HTML, and this is the ending tag. In the middle is the about text, which we can change again. Add a plus button here, a plus character here, and all these here is metadata that just describes more about the button itself. Which here it says there's no icon. It uses a theme named A. It is not a mini version of it, etc., etc. So it describes the button, and so we can change the color of it, but it's not gonna be permanent. It's not gonna be saved in the source code. It's just going to be saved temporarily while you play around with the app itself, with the website. But if I'm gonna save that style sheet, style information I have just updated. I'm gonna refresh it, so you can see the styles have not been added. So you can see it reverted back to the previous state. But I'm going to open the CSS file we have created in the last session, the app styles, and add this style I have just created before. So it is an ID button, ID of that button, which is called start screen about button, and then the style I want to apply. It's background color, and this is the code for that color. So if I'm gonna save it and test it, I should see the changes of that button taking effect. Here we go. So this is useful for understanding the layout and understanding the styles, but then also you want to understand more of the communication within server and the client and your app. And this is the network tab that is very important for you as well. If your app is communicating with a server, so I'm gonna clean it up, and I'm gonna send some information here, like my name is Tom, and submit it. I can see a report being sent. Actually, there's a few files exchanged with the database, and one of them is this post reports, which is a response status code 200, which is okay. It's not 404 like we normally see sometimes when we mistype a URL. It means that the data has been successfully sent, and I can see what I have sent here at the bottom, and that is date, the current date, email, latitude, longitude, and number and note are empty, and the name I gave is Tom. So you can inspect the information that your app is exchanging with the backend of the databases. And I'm sorry, I cannot. I didn't have enough time to cover it all today. Hopefully you guys have some questions, and if you do, well, you can ask me now. I'm not gonna go away, but you can write all the information, all the questions, and all the errors that you faced. Sorry, I'm gonna open this. All the information on the forum that we have created for you. So and also on my email me as well, and all the other resources that you might need would be on the APRI docs documents and forum. So they have covered quite a lot of users' problems, and I'm sure that would help you a lot. And what else? I think that it's a good idea to explore other apps, how they work, try to mimic their functionality, see how you can replicate that with Apri.io, and hopefully this course has given you a basic background on what is possible within your reach, what you can do, and hopefully that will have inspired some new ideas for new apps for you guys. So thank you again. I'll be here by the chat and I'll be replying to you, but I will be also on my email and forum. So thank you again, and all the best.